Greetings and a warm welcome to this week's ORT, where we discuss love, relationships, and marriage in the black community. This week's ORT, we are talking about marriage amongst our learned panelists, Brother S, Ebony Harmony, and Kindren Spirit and myself, Kush. So this was your topic, your suggestions?
It is, yeah. And it's a bit misleading because it's not marriage as such.
Okay.
I'm not raising the institution of marriage. It's more the attitude, I suppose, of marriage, towards marriage within the Caribbean community in particular. And what triggered this is a conversation that I had with a friend of mine a few weeks back, somebody I haven't seen for a while, and we just kind of met up. And she put something to me that I hadn't really thought about before, and it's been on my mind. And what she said to me was that she has a concern about marriage within the Caribbean community in particular, as opposed to within the African community or whatever other groups. And what she put to me was that she has never had a proposal of marriage made to her. And given that it's usually the man who makes the proposal, she's never had one. And within her immediate family circle, none of the women have actually had one. This is the post-Windrush generation, so this is first generation born here. And why that's on her mind is because when she talks to the youngest generation, the young girls coming up in their teens, there is an expectation that marriage is going to be part of their life's journey. This is going to happen. So what she put to me was, does she, as an individual, and do we as a community, have some kind of responsibility to be managing the expectations of kind of teenage girls within the Caribbean community now? Because statistically, their aspiration for marriage, particularly to somebody of the same ilk, is not likely to happen.
Okay.
So should we be managing that? And if we don't, what is the potential impact on their self-esteem when it doesn't happen? That's what was put to me, and it threw me.
So she thinks that marriage should happen.
Yes.
Okay.
What she was doing is she was comparing us to other communities. What kicked off the conversation was she was observing that our lives seem to be very, very different from that of other communities when it comes to marriage.
In other words, it's just a catch.
Yeah. Or even that. And we look around and we see relationships, they come, they go, some last a bit longer, but we're not seeing marriages, especially amongst the younger generation, because I know young people in their 20s, young white people, for example, who are either married or contemplating it. And I work alongside people who are in like their 50s, who have got children in their 20s, and their marriage is an ongoing conversation. Not in the same way within my own community. And I'm thinking, well, actually, has she got a point? And is this an expectation that we should be managing? And if we manage it, are we buying into something that's quite negative? And if we don't manage it, are we potentially setting up young girls in particular for a bit of a fall later on when we know what the data is showing us?
Okay.
So that's what was put to me, and I thought, oh.
All right. Well, I'm just going to read out a few figures here.
Okay.
There was 956, I think it was last year before, civil partnerships, which is 5.3% of, an increase of 5.3%. And 65% of them were between men. The average age of women forming civil partnerships was 51.6. Didn't get the ethnicity in terms of the group for that. 2016, there were 249,793 marriages, up by 1.7%. 2.8 were same-sex. 2016, for the first year, saw less religious marriages than regular marriages than the other type, or non-religious, which is 24%. 40% of Asian households are married. For the African Caribbean community, or black as it's labeled on the government YouGov website, is 15% are married with children, 4.1% married with no children. There's 26.2% single with or non-pensioner age, and 2.5% married with non-dependent children. 18.9% single parent household with children. That's what's on their website.
And where is that from?
The .gov.uk.
Okay.
Yes.
That's government statistics.
Yeah. So that's covering up to 2016, 2017. That's covering. So you're saying both ways. Is this trend?
Yeah.
Are they on the cutting edge of something by not getting married? Or are they on the receiving end of something, is what you're saying?
Well, they have an expectation of marriage, is what she is picking up.
Mm-hmm.
But she's questioning whether that expectation is realistic,
Okay.
given
the way things
the
are.
way things are, the evidence of our own eyes, as well
Okay.
as what the data is telling us.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to hear people's views on marriage. I wish I could describe Brother S's face for you there.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder, can somebody do what they don't know? Can somebody do what they don't know? So I guess I'm going to put it out there. I wonder of our daughters and princesses that are coming up, within the conversation of our social conditioning of them,
Yeah.
how much of the idea of marriage have we introduced into the conversation?
You think that may be one of the reasons why there's been this fall off?
I'm putting it out there. Because if I think the example that you gave of the Asian community, 40%, we know it's part of the conversation because culturally it's an expectation that is embedded in the culture.
Yeah.
Right? Whether or not they do, but we know that they are certainly under pressure, they will at some point to be done it. So they'll do their education and they might be sending them to uni, and then they say after that, for the girls, you know what's happening. Yeah? Now they've got to marry someone, so that means the parallel is that for the boys, they're saying at some point you need to fix up.
Yeah.
And get yourself a wife, right?
I would like to add into that there is also within the Asian community a practice of marrying off family members, especially if they got no drink problems, alcohol, mental health problems. You'll fly in somebody from India the next week and marry them off. That hasn't been extrapolated from there, but that wouldn't explain the 40%. No. I'm just saying that there's different.
But I'm wondering amongst us, what is our experience of that conversation being had as part of the social conditioning of our young women? Because we historically tend to seem to do the things backwards. I am one of them.
Right, which is?
I did the children first, although the expectation in my head, I did one of the children first, but the expectation in my head was always that I was going to get married at some point.
Yeah.
But that's where it came from. My parents were married.
Right.
So I had the template.
Okay.
And my parents did not divorce, my mother passed away. So I had the template. It was in my head that it was going to, in my psyche, that it was always going to be something that I was going to strive to do.
That's interesting, because we're post Windrush, and most of the Windrush generation were married, or married when they got here, or married before they come, whatever. So marriage was their state of being generally. And if you can go as far back as you want, right back to the atrocities on the plantation, and people were still jumping the broom, even when they were catching 50 kinds of hell. So it's not that there isn't a template. Even under the worst of circumstances, there were still people trying to have that union, right? It's something about our conditioning here. I don't think it's something that's followed across the Atlantic. It's something about here. Because it didn't follow the Windrush
with
generation.
Brother S's point, though, that he's questioning whether the parents are having this discussion here.
Mm.
And he's wondering, well, if that is a factor. Well, I mean, another.
But you had the template though, didn't you? It's not that. Did I take from that you weren't necessarily having the conversation, but you had a template?
We had the
that
conversation
there was
too.
somewhere. Oh, okay, so
There was
it
an
wasn't in your
expectation at some
DNA
point.
that this was going to happen. You were also discussing the
Yes.
possibility of it
Yes,
happening.
as a man,
All right.
part of that conversation with my dad as a growing man would be at some point,
Yeah.
you're going to need to know that you have to provide for your
Right,
family.
okay.
So within that, I read then that, therefore I must have a partner, and I wouldn't have called her a partner then.
Yeah.
It would have just been that I must have a wife,
Yeah.
and that we're going to do this journey together, right? And then what
Yeah.
comes of that, be it the children, the home, the whatever, that was always going to be something that was feasible.
Did you say beat the children?
No.
Listen.
And it was
Oh, you said beat it the children.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right? Be it the children, yeah. But it was always something that was going to be feasible and manageable. It was likely as opposed to improbable and unlikely.
Okay.
Okay.
There was no time frame on it though. It was just, I knew it was going to happen at some
Like death and taxes.
point. Gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few complexities. I think there's a generational shift in terms of what was modelled for us in our parents' generation has to be framed slightly different now because of the generation shift. In some respects, I feel like we're doing it a little bit in reverse. We're talking about marriage where perhaps we should be having conversations with our children about relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what that means, what that should look like, and so forth, and what have you. And you said something which was quite interesting as well. When you were kind of like introducing what you were saying, you said the social conditioning of our young girls. And I read that to mean, okay, well, the expectation is on the females, and you led from the female perspective as well, which
Yeah.
again led me back to actually
Very
we need
much
to be
so,
talking
yeah.
about relationships. And to some respects, not to kind of like digress too much, I think that also feeds into perhaps our lack of, in our community, ability to kind of build together and sustain our own, because we're really not dealing with
Yeah.
relationships and so forth. And I think that's a kind of part of it, possibly. And I think in the absence of talking about relationships, do we really know what marriage means? Because as we sit here, marriage perhaps means get married, have children, have a journey together. But it's so much more than that. It's so much richer than that. There's so much more value in it that we're not talking about, or we're not kind of like really being quite explicit about. So I think we just kind of have to reframe our minds, and we're to some respects I feel like we're up against it as well, because when we look at the generation now and what they're exposed to, social media alone kind of strips down the sanctity of marriage, because what they're exposed to is the sexuality of woman, and the value of woman is about kind of like exposing yourself in one way or the other. Do you understand what I'm saying? And,
But the Asian groups are exposed to them,
Well,
but they've got a higher percentage.
But here's the thing, I'm glad you asked that, because for me, the Asian group is not a model.
No, but I'm just saying,
yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of social media, I would expect
Yeah.
that they, unless they're managing it differently, that
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
influence would also be there.
Absolutely. However, the influence within the family is more demanding. Not necessarily stronger, but I think more demanding. The expectation is that you give this image of marriage and togetherness.
Yeah.
Even if you married your cousin, you've got to
Yeah.
be married and what have you. Do you understand? So yes, they're exposed to it, but
So is it that we're more real and they've got a bit more fakeness about their marriage? So our stats are probably showing much more of the kind of love and harmony marriages as opposed to a kind of clandestine reasons for getting married.
I would agree with that, absolutely, because yes, we in the main believe in the sanctity of marriage and marriage and so forth, but we don't have that controlling force, demanding expectation behind it. You know, if it's planned for and it happens, we welcome it and we try and support that and so forth, but there isn't the demand, so we're not going to stack up the statistics.
Oh, okay.
because,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I've said a lot of things there, but I think there's some
Yeah, yeah.
complexities that we've got to take
No, you made
into
some very good points.
you know, into all of in regards to marriage. So we've got to know what is marriage. What do we understand marriage to be? Should we be talking about relationships first, not in as part of even,
Yeah.
but even from the growth and development stage? Is it enough to model that my mum and dad are married? Not really. We need to be talking some more.
Quality of
Yeah,
relationship.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
returning back to the gender issue, which was raised by Brother S, but also by the person who you
Yeah.
spoke to. Now, it's been said to me by a woman that a woman, if she's with a man, needs to make sure she get married because when he's dead, she won't get anything. So, no, but this may be why for women it has maybe a stronger kind of liberation element. You know what I mean?
Can I?
So I'm just pointing to that.
Yeah.
Not that it's
Yeah.
the reason. I'm just saying that this
No,
has been said.
absolutely.
It's a valid point.
Again, I'm glad you said
Yeah.
that because when you were both talking, I was thinking also, marriage is also about the personalities within that. So, yes, that woman said that, and she's been true to herself.
Mm.
Yeah, that's her mindset about marriage and what have you. I mean, to counter that, I could say you could be with a man and he's alive and you don't get anything. So
Yeah.
It's no guarantee.
Yeah, but
it's about the mindset.
but there is some truth about women not being paid as much as men, and at the time, well, not so much now, but men used to be the main breadwinner and bringing
Yeah.
the so maybe she was speaking from that standpoint.
This is an older woman.
Yeah, she's probably in the middle 50s now. Going to 60s.
An older woman.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying if you compare it to somebody who's
Sure.
who's
The
like
mindset.
20 now.
Yes, the
You know what I
mindset.
mean?
would be
And
different,
but
yeah.
also about the experience of what women had when she was growing up.
Sure.
To they weren't the main breadwinners. And they probably she's experienced women who, when their partners died, weren't able to access any finances.
So that sort of strengthens what I'm saying. It's about the personalities.
Mm.
Because we're women in our 50s, and that wouldn't be my
Yeah, but
mindset.
it's more about, is there a truth to it as opposed to about the age thing? Is there a truth that actually if you're with a man and you're not married to him, that if something happens then you probably don't have rights? You may not even need, maybe it's actually about mementos, it's not even about getting money, but it's something from that, from your partner.
I don't know if I'm as aware of that as an
Okay.
issue in financial terms,
Yeah.
but I think it might be more of an issue in terms of women's kind of status and how you are perceived
Okay.
beyond
Yeah,
your
yeah.
relationship. Because if you're not his
Yeah.
wife, what are you?
Yeah, you don't
And
need
the respect that goes with being
Yeah.
a wife,
Yeah.
and then how that's perceived. It's more about that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's more that I was thinking.
So how they're perceived within the wider
Yeah,
community.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in terms of the fall off, church, is that a factor for the Caribbean community? Because we know that certain members within the African community are really on this church thing. That they're every
Yes.
week. It's these things have been spoken about. Whereas in the Caribbean community, we I'm not saying we've all bailed out on the church, but we have had much more of a critical ear about the church than some of the other communities, whether it's in our music or what kind of street culture or other choices.
So here we are. It's a good point, but I think it would smack. The church, in some ways, we could draw comparisons with what we were talking about, the Asian culture and the pressure that would come with that.
The internal pressure.
Part of that internal pressure in the church would be there to be saying, brother ting and sister ting. Now, come on now.
Yeah.
The church ain't really feeling this, that you all been cohabiting together.
Catch.
For,
Yeah.
A Christian share the pick with them already.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're still awaiting
Yeah.
news of the proposal.
Yeah.
What is going on? So we know that, the pressure that would come with that, and for the individuals concerned to feel away
Yeah.
because there would be judgment
Yeah.
cast
Yeah.
upon them.
Yeah.
Even in this tabernacle,
Yeah, yeah.
there would be judgment cast upon them. So you could see why for some of them would think, rather than have the judgment, I'm coming out of the church.
Yeah.
I can do without that.
Yeah.
Because the church historically doesn't seem to embrace when it talks about forgiveness and love, but it doesn't embrace it when it actually appears to happen in practical terms.
Yeah.
They tend to make a judgment and say, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So are you saying that you think it's a factor?
I think
The lack of church attendance from the Caribbean community is a factor.
well, of course,
Okay.
of course, right? Now, this, as this sister said here, Ebony said here, there are so many other factors in this. Even if we're just thinking about, okay, in America, for instance, marriage and the as an institution, when you got those people who have married numerous occasions, then, you know, after meeting somebody for, we met after 3 weeks, bam, 8 weeks, blam, we went on holiday and we met them on the cruise ship, blum, and we came back and we married, blam. That, I don't think you'd hear many anecdotal stories coming out of the African Caribbean community in which
No.
that would happen,
Uh-uh.
right? They might have met, they might have done some Stella got a groove back, but there wouldn't have been to ring and proposal and straight off the bat. I think we're more pragmatic
Yeah.
about those instances.
Or we don't fall in love as easily
Perhaps not.
so often.
But the idea of finding a partner where the individuals involved can say to themselves, this is a life partner for me, then at that point then everything is possible.
Yeah.
I think if the relationship, when the relationship appears to be more conditional. So for instance, if that man who's in his 30s and 40s or maybe even older and is still living at his dear old mother's house, having done the permanent relationships in and out and failed. Marriage is not one of the primary things that he's thinking about now. If anything, we might be talking about his ship has sailed. And likewise, that woman who is now 3-4 children in with the man that she thought was going to be her life partner, and then he chucked her in for a newer model, and she's thinking like, well, I'm off to, like, who's going to want me now?
But why didn't they get married first, I guess is the
Yeah.
question.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge. So that's my. All right. So you said it. So you said the bit for me. Why didn't they? Something happened
Did the
amongst
conversation
the two
ever
of
come
them,
up? Yeah.
Exactly.
where maybe before the second and third and fourth, she said, "Well, hang on," and it's a shame. It's a shame. I heard myself say it just now. I put the emphasis on her, when in fact that's not right. I just heard myself
But you
say
know
it.
it's only
There you
women
go.
who want to get
Yeah,
married.
that's
So
what
speak
I'm
the
saying.
truth.
But that is, I think it's relevant though, because the conversation I had was about the girls. It was about the fact that there is still an aspiration for it amongst very young girls, but it's about whether or not that aspiration had a realistic chance of happening for the majority of them. That's what the concern was.
But it's
But the aspiration is
It's
there.
there, but it's a mute
Even
point.
the lack of
It's a mute point if we don't have the same conversation with the boys.
That's the thing. So
And that's the bit I just got now. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's I just got. But it doesn't matter if we're not having the
So it's
conversation. with
falling
the
out of
boys.
the atmosphere into their minds, but
Wow.
it's not. Where does it go?
And that kind of, it's almost like a conditioning of mind, and it happens to the men as well. Because the way we speak it and the way we hear it, it's like the women are lucky if they get married.
Yeah.
So then the men will have that mindset as well, you know. And perhaps there isn't a rush to get married because I can pick, choose and refuse and you'll be lucky if I marry you kind of thing. I don't know, you know, which I don't feel like we're having this balance, expectation, conversation, mindset,
Yeah.
talking about relationships.
But you've opened my eyes to it. And I'm thinking then about post-Windrush
Yeah.
and those men, us, we. Are
Speak for yourself.
Are we having that conversation with our boys? Now I got 3 boys now. Trust me, the 2 of them I've had the conversation with. The 2 that are appropriate, and one of them's getting married next year. It's,
Congrats.
you understand? So
But is it important to get married?
I think it's important to make So I'm reminded of that little, somebody sent me something the other day. There was a little boy in there, a little black boy, and his dad was teaching him something. It was on WhatsApp.
Oh yeah. I saw it.
It reminded me when the little
The
boy
little boy,
said,
the dreadlocks.
yes,
And
if
he
you
said,
don't
well,
stand for something, you fall for anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll stop it at the first bit. It is important for us to stand for something.
So what are we standing for? The
Our
marriage?
relationship must stand for
Okay.
something. And if we formalize it, we're saying, look me up.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that
Okay.
a long relationship for 30 years and somebody married for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like if you're not married after the 30 years or hopefully before, that it's not as good as a married relationship.
I wouldn't go that far because I think it is back to your point, Ebony, about the quality of the relationship.
Mhm.
But I think if marriage isn't the only option on the table,
Okay.
are we coming with viable alternatives
Oh, okay.
and what are they?
Mhm.
Because it might well be that there's another conversation to be had, and if we're looking, for example, at more traditional ways of sanctifying our unions that are more meaningful to us.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, are we doing that? And if we're doing that, I really want to know a bit more about
Right.
it. If we found a way of doing it that is more consistent with who we are,
Yes.
I would really like to know about that.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us.
So sorry, just to cap, you're saying that there has to be a replacement, something that, so if it's not
Yeah,
marriage, it's
but-
some other ceremony, some other
Something
way
that
of
I think,
containing something that
your
and makes
point,
it discernible.
That something
Okay.
that signals to everybody. It's not just about a kind of a union between the two of you, but it's also what you're communicating to
Yeah.
the wider community
No,
and the
fair
world
point.
about this is.
And stability.
Yeah, this is who we are. This is our family,
Mm.
and this is. There has to be a way of marking that.
Yeah.
This becomes a we.
Yeah,
If you
You're
think
part
about
of
the
something
lazy
greater.
language that we sometimes
Yeah.
use, that we use in our community, and we again in reference to the women who may have bore a child for a bedroom of ours, and we say it's the baby mother.
Yeah.
Is there anything more foul?
Yeah.
So what a title to give. I mean, I prefer not to have that title at all be said or be given to
Yeah.
anybody, because it just makes them sound like they were
Mm.
a donor thing. It was
Yeah.
it was an item
Reduces
thing.
them,
It
yeah.
absolutely reduces it. So when I'm saying about the marriage thing, I'm saying about another example, a replacement for that, is about saying give the person a title. When you see me and you say, who's that with Sinclair?
Interviews, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
they have a title.
Yeah.
Not that. I don't know. I felt away. I wasn't quite sure if I should even ask, because that's not who I saw him with a couple of weeks ago at the christening. And it shouldn't be that. We shouldn't all be going. No,
Yeah.
we should, and he should be saying, that's right. That's who I'm with, and that's who's with
Yeah.
me.
Mm.
And she should feel just as comfortable and confident in being able to say, that's right. All the non-verbal stuff that is said amongst
it's a
us.
celebration of something as well. I think it's you're declaring something quite positive, and how you do that. I mean, there might be other ways of doing that, but I'm quite interested in looking at. But if it's not marriage in the kind of Western sense, then what
Yeah.
is it?
So we've highlighted that parenting is the factor in the decline.
I don't know. I think Ebony's kind of complex multi-layered kind of analysis of it. I think there's so much more to this than
Okay.
I think parenting is a factor,
Mm.
but I think there are lots of other things going on.
Well, we've spoken about the church, the decline of
Church,
church
yeah.
attendance.
The church attendance. I think there are. I think as well a lot of mixed messages coming through the media and images that are not necessarily helpful or constructive. It's a lot of things in the mix, and it seems to be impacting us a bit differently.
So let me ask you, your work with families,
Yeah.
who's more interested in a relationship, gender-wise, women or men? And I'll ask you the same thing at you as well. Young men or the young
That's an
women?
interesting, but I think there's a difference between what people are feeling and what they will necessarily communicate to you or admit to.
Okay.
And I'm not necessarily seeing situations where, for example, the dad or the man doesn't care, I think his way of articulating it can be a bit awkward and sloppy, and it might come across that he's not. But I think we're probably not very savvy about picking up on the ways in which boys and men might be trying to get that across.
Yeah.
So I'm very reluctant to say they don't care. I think that the emotional language probably isn't there in the way that women would put it. And I think it's a dangerous road to go down to say that, because I'm not necessarily seeing that.
Okay.
I'm seeing something that's much more complicated. And I think that the way that the services are structured doesn't necessarily allow for that male voice to be heard in the way that it needs. It's a very female-dominated profession.
Okay, yeah.
And the way that we express ourselves verbally and on paper, and the way that we expect boys and men to express themselves, if they don't fit that mould, we can be quite dismissive of the fact that, and there's a lot that needs to be done, because they do have a language. It's just that we're not necessarily well versed in it.
Yeah.
So, but they're often trying to tell you something, and we're just not grasping it. So, not caring is not something I would subscribe to.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It's not a case of not caring. I mean, it's slightly, I was going to say it's a little bit difficult for me to say, because I'm in the arena where there's family courts. But when I think about it, actually not, because
Not what?
it's not that difficult to kind of decipher.
Okay.
And because whereas I work directly with the families where there is separation and it's about contact with children and so forth, what have you, the separated parents, often one or the other, have remarried. So there is still the commitment aspect, there is still the belief in marriage, there's still the desire for the stability. And to be quite honest, so far it's mainly no, it's not fair, either side.
Oh, okay.
It's either side, either the male or the female have remarried. And it's, which is really interesting as well, because there's the condemnation of the female or the male in whatever case I'm dealing with. But that person will have remarried and will be in a relationship and so forth, or what have you. So the belief is still there, the desire to be committed and the falling in love and so forth is still there for whatever reason.
I'm thinking about these younger men and younger women, about them contemplating, is it worthwhile investing in something that, and not being able to see how the investment might pay out.
Okay. Is this connected to their experience of their home life when they was growing up? You think?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe. We can't help but borrow from some of that which we know.
Well, they borrow a lot of things that didn't come from their home, so I'm just...
As well. As well, right? But I wonder about them having no idea about some of the beauty, some of the more positive things that you could get out of a marriage per se. And then saying, well, if this is working, if it ain't broke.
Yeah.
I think no, there is a much more hardened image for the men, and even for the women. I mean, there is a lot, if you look at like dancehall, there's a lot more women talking sexual music. When you're listening to that type of music, you have to wonder, well, how does it affect the younger people growing up now? Do they kind of do the women see the men as being hardened criminals, and that's who they're attracted to, and it would be hard to find a husband out there? And same with the women, if the young men are looking at the women as all being objects, then they're objectifying themselves through the rap music videos and the songs. Would it be hard for me to find a wife in there? Because I'm going to be honest, back in the day, a man would think, if a man gets locked up and goes to prison as his friend, he expects that. But he's not expecting that from the women. The women were seen as homemakers.
Yeah.
They were seen as somebody who you could find stability with. I don't know if that is the case now, given this prevalence of this. Because even within the stabbings, You have girls stabbing girls now, which we didn't have that
Yeah.
before. So I wonder if that also adds to this mix of,
Hardened environment.
yeah, what was a dream 30 years ago? If you could settle down, you buy a house.
True.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
could sell that dream to some of the younger generation, though, because this whole thing about long-term commitments, I think maybe affected in a different way now.
So there's why I'm talking about that investment.
Yeah.
If they can't see what they're going to
Get
get
that as a return.
Yeah.
as a return, then
Yeah.
why am I
And
going to
what
invest?
does long term mean to them anyway?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even before that, it was interesting as you were talking there, I was thinking like, okay, so here we are talking about marriage, and there's a whole chapter, a whole section of this thing missing in the hardening of them, perhaps. It's love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're hardened, you're also hardened
True.
against
Yeah.
love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
And,
true.
and we should be talking about love and marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
Love and marriage.
Yeah.
Because
No, for real.
fundamentally, the person who I chose, it's not that I haven't been in love before, but in
This
making
is the one.
this decision, well, I don't know if the one. You could
Yeah, but
probably,
in terms of you going for it, you're not going to go and say maybe. You
Sure.
even
Oh, no,
at the time.
there was a no doubt.
Yeah.
And they said, well, all right, let
Yeah.
the chips fall as they lay,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know that anybody enters into a relationship or a serious commitment thinking the worst may happen.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We
No,
we go
no.
for it.
Yeah.
And what we find out later is that on some
may
occasions the
not
worst
work out.
happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But when we enter it, our eyes are open and we're fully committed to it. And I think that's love first.
Yeah, man.
Love take you that place where all this no doubt thing
Yeah,
about
man.
even contemplating the idea of marriage comes born out of love.
No,
Yeah.
no. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I'm going to end on that point. But before you go, I want to hear from everyone one thing they'll do differently after this discussion.
I'm going to find somebody and propose.
I thought you were going to say you're going to stop every young person and say, you're married, yeah? Look, don't turn, you're married. Let me have to come pull you off of people.
I will make a point of starting conversations with at least the younger people in my family about the
Yeah,
subject
the M
of
word.
love and marriage,
Marriage.
Thank
actually,
you.
and try to get a better understanding as to how they're perceiving it.
Okay. Everybody.
Again, in regards to young people, have discussions with them about relationships and how they perceive those and where they think they go to. What do they mean? So conversations about relationships with younger.
That's a whole subject matter in of itself. I think it's a really valid point you make. Just thinking about, again, about investment, relationships. What does that mean? Many of our young people are still at home through lack of finances. They're still there, and their partner or their potential partner may live, near or far. But again, no realistic prospects of being able to have their own.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean about how we can relate?
Yeah.
We're relating from a distance. We can't even afford to cohabit or
Yeah.
to be thinking about
The barriers.
moving forward because of all of those other barriers that are in the way. Again, it makes, what does that do to us then? About
That's
the
true.
realism of even contemplating something like that. Because, you say, man, what are you talking about? I'm here. I'm still in the bedroom that I grew up when I was a kid. And now they're asking me about marriage. I just about can afford to give my mum and dad this little change and push my whip. Understand? But now they're telling me about marriage. It's
Yeah.
like
The bombshell.
it's way out there.
Too big.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant points, though.
But I will be raising it. I'll be raising marriage because relationships going to take too long. I can just say when they're not get married and leave it, and they can go and figure. And there's loads of stuff on the YouTube they can go find about relationships. Yes, so thank you all.
Included below are links to this discussion. Please share, comment and subscribe. And remember, talk the thing.